Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm really excited for you all to hear from Steph Korpal and Christy Pennison. And they are two dear friends that I've known for a few years now. And we've done, we cross paths a lot with different conferences and things that we've done. But Steph and Christy, welcome. Glad you're here.
Just so happy to be with another favorite person of ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for
Well,
having us, Gordon.
Well, this is going to be fun, and I think you're going to learn a lot from Steph and Christy. But Steph and Christy, as I start with everyone, tell folks a little more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed, and also how you all kind of formed your collab and your relationship.
Yeah. So I have a practice in St. Louis, Missouri. We're up to 9 therapists and 2 admins. But I was solo for about 2 years, just kind of slogging along, trying to get that caseload full, and then was able to do so as many practices did during the pandemic. And now just love talking all things group practice life, group practice ownership, and I've had the good fortune of meeting so many wonderful people along the way, including my now best friend, Christy Pennison.
Yeah. Well, and Gordon, to tell you a little bit about how we all got started. So I'm from Central Louisiana and I'm a multi-location practice owner that has a group that's insurance based. And, we really love serving our community. But in 2019, I had this crazy idea to let's move back home. And I didn't know what I didn't know. I just knew that I felt like I wanted to start a practice. And like Steph, started out as a solo and then the vision has expanded. But along that journey, when me and Steph were actually in a mastermind consulting group,
Accountability group.
learning how to do all the things, Gordon, when you first
Mm-hmm.
start and you're like, I don't even know what I don't know, but I just need people to tell me what I need to do because what I'm doing is not working and I just need to figure this out. And so we were in community together. And one weekend or one day we were in a Zoom call, kind of like, what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Steph messaged me on the side in the Zoom chat. Now, I really had never talked to Steph
Mm-hmm.
like we're doing right now. We just talked in these groups. And she was like, hey, I'm thinking about going to Nashville for a weekend to just get away and work on some things because we were both about to add another person into our
Mm-hmm.
practice, right? We were going from solo to group. Would you be interested in joining me? Okay. This is the extent of the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And I was like, I told her, I said, let me check my calendar. Cause I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, by the way. And
Uh-huh.
Steph is at 1. What are you, Gordon?
I'm a two with a three
Okay. You're a
wing.
2.
2, 3.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny.
So
I just taught a course at my church on the Enneagram. So
Oh, fun.
that's funny
Fresh
that you
in your
bring that
mind.
up. So yeah. So anyway,
yeah.
go ahead.
But no,
Yeah.
but the 7s, right? So the
Uh-huh.
7 in me was like, ooh, trip, spontaneous, possibly fun. I get to go hang out with somebody. And Steph was like, I don't know if she was fully expecting me to respond as quickly as I did. Steph, did you?
I have a hard time remembering, but it really doesn't fit with my personality that I asked a stranger from the internet that I had known for maybe 10 hours in a group setting to come meet me and stay in the same Airbnb with me for a weekend.
Yeah. So of course, Gordon, I checked my calendar and I realized I could make it happen. So I responded back, let's do it. I think I booked my flights like right away.
Mhm.
You did.
But this was so crazy because Steph picked me up in this Mustang rental car at
They
the
upsold me
airport.
at the.
And it was like a convertible, wasn't it? Like, yeah. And this is how little we didn't know each other. This how little. I didn't even have her phone number. I was texting her on Messenger to let her know I was here. Okay. And so we pull up to this Airbnb that's like kind of on the outskirts of town, right?
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
were
it
in the
was a little bit of a
suburbs.
drive. Okay. We were in the burbs. Okay. And I can
Mhm.
remember me and Steph looking at each other and we sat in our respective doorways because we probably wanted to provide some level of distance, stranger danger, but we've committed to this Airbnb together. And I remember us just looking at each other and was like, so tell me about yourself. And like, how do you download a life story? And like,
Yeah.
but from there, a friendship emerged. And what we found throughout the past, maybe this has been 4 years ago, Steph, I think the past 4 years is how to do this practice owner journey and community, and how that really does make the journey a little bit better. Doesn't mean it's
Right.
A
easier,
lot
but
bit better.
a little bit
A
better.
lot bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been one of the things that I've just learned, and it's been reinforced. And then you all kind of know some of my story. If it weren't for community, I could have not made through all the things I've gone through over the last several years. But yeah, and I think another thing, and I know we were kind of talking about this before we started, just about the importance of reflecting on things. And another word that I like to use a lot is discern things.
Ah,
And so I know you guys have done a lot of work around that. And so you want to say more about that?
yeah. Christy kind of really came up with this new wonderful, alliteration? What am I going for?
What's the things whenever you say, like, you try to think of words that it's the 5 R's acronym,
Hmm.
iteration. I don't know what the name of it
Hmm.
is, but
Yeah.
something to help
Hmm.
you remember about how
Hmm.
reflection has helped us. But go ahead, Steph.
Yeah, so we just came off of a weekend working in community in Nashville, again with other group practice owners. And so Christy and I were meeting this week and just reflecting on what goes so well in these settings. And she was able to zoom out and really identify that, of course, the community is a big part of that, but also it's what you do in the community, and taking the time for that reflection has been what has allowed us and our other colleagues turned friends to be able to experience not only success in business ownership, but also I think a lot of joy, because
Hmm.
that doesn't necessarily come naturally in entrepreneurial life, right? I don't think many people who are entrepreneurs would use that as one of their main descriptors of the
Hmm.
life they've chosen. Fulfillment, welcome challenge, the hardest but best thing they've ever done. But I don't think joy and happiness usually are there
Hmm.
in at least those first maybe 5 to 10 years. But it can be fun and it can be joyful if you create the space to reflect on what you've done, and also to reflect on the things that your colleagues have accomplished and the beautiful things they're putting out into the world and the healing that they are inspiring people to achieve. And so she came up with this really cool 5 R's opportunity as a way for people to get that reflection in their own life, but do the reflection in a robust and dynamic way.
Right. Right. You want to mention what those are? The 5
Go for it,
R's?
Christy.
Yeah.
So glad you asked, Gordon.
Yeah.
But no, these are just things we reflect in our own reflection, said, what are the things that could really help somebody be intentional about this? Because we all know that, I don't know about you, Gordon, but I have a lot of good intentions that don't always get actualized. Okay.
Hmm.
So I'm like,
Hmm.
I really want to do that, but it's hard to sometimes prioritize making those things happen in our lives. And I especially think when you are on the path of practice ownership, whether you're a solo practitioner, whether you're just getting started, or whether you've moved into group, wherever you are along the continuum in your journey, I think that reflection for me has really been pivotal. That's the not pivotal, that word. Okay.
Hmm.
In doing that. And so the 5 R's is really, one of them is rhythm. And that is, how can you carve out a specific time reoccurring on your calendar to ensure that you are giving yourself space and time to reflect? And I don't know about you, Gordon, but I can show up all day long for other people. Showing up for myself
Hmm.
sometimes,
Hmm.
questionable. Okay.
Hmm.
So, and as practice owners, we're not going to leave a client hanging, right? If we schedule that
Hmm.
appointment with that client, we're going to be there, right? We're not going to just like let them show up to the office and be like coming in 30 minutes late. No, we're going to be to that appointment because we want to hold the space for them, and that's what we're there to do. And so I think that one of those things to be able to have that space for reflection is to create some kind of reoccurring meeting with yourself or with an accountability buddy in your calendar, whether it be weekly, monthly, quarterly. It really doesn't matter, but something that you can show up consistently to say, I'm going to give myself some space and time to really reflect on what's working, what's not working. From a spiritual
Mhm.
perspective, is this aligning with what I'm feeling called to do in this season? And is it aligning with my values? Where
Right.
is life? Because, like you even said, I mean, life has unexpected seasons, it has a lot of challenges, and at different points in time, we need different things to make it through. And so I think that rhythm kind of creates that ability to do that. But also, I call it ritual. And that's like, where's the space that I need to do this in? Or how do I need to do it? And me and Steph were talking about the differences like that. We kind of sometimes do this. I'm a big journaler.
Mhm.
She, not so much. Okay.
And
Mhm.
I've tried so hard.
Mhm.
Yeah. But she said the few things that's helped her is like maybe, whether it be actually reading or doing a puzzle. So, whatever works for you, what is that either that space, that environment, that action, that ritual that allows you to do this? And then I
Mm.
think the third thing, and then I'll let Steph take the last two, but is relationship. The third R is relationship. So, you know, how can I get myself around people who maybe get it? How can I have different perspectives weigh in on stuff that I'm reflecting on right now? How can I
Mhm.
even have a sounding board if I want to verbally
Mm.
process something going
Mm.
on in my business or in my life? Then that can help me kind of reprioritize based off of knowing me. And that relationship piece takes time, but sometimes it just starts with getting that relationship started. So those are three of the 5 R's, but
Yeah.
I'll, I'll
And
let
then we
Steph take the other two.
we round it out with realignment or just realigning because things change in our life. The business changes, your life changes, the demands on your time and energy change, or even within the business, right? Challenges come up and things just kind of move. And so whether you're trying to discern something through that's a new challenge, or it's just you're leveling up. And so just things are going on. It's so good to make sure that the decisions you are making or the way you're steering the ship does align with your values, your priorities, because it can get really hazy sometimes, right? Oh my
Right.
gosh, how do I handle this? Well, if you were taking that time and space to reflect, you have a chance to revisit your values and your priorities. And so often that is how you find the clarity for that
Right.
hardship. And then finally, the fifth one is resolve. And that resolve is about following through on the clarity you got, right? So it's so easy to constantly be busy or to take this, new idea and let it just kind of sit in the corner because of urgent things that come up, other people asking for you. But if you make sure that you have follow through and momentum from the space, the clarity, the ideas, you will be able to make it through that challenge. You will be able to level up your business. And a lot of times that relationship comes back into because then your people are keeping you accountable to that
Right.
implementation. So that's the
Right.
other cool thing about the 5 R's is that they all work in tandem and can end up being a positive snowball effect on the other. And so
Mhm.
no single variable gets lost. They're all so interwoven that they
Yeah.
create a really powerful way to visualize or construct how you are going to reflect for that clarity and strategy in your vision,
Right.
in your work or your
Right.
business.
Oh yeah, I love how you all have conceptualized all of that. As you were mentioning all of those, I was just trying to think, okay, am I doing that, or where are the places that I'm doing that well, and the places that I'm not doing it well? And I think at least for me, the implementation part, the resolve, is always the tricky part, at least for me. But I
Mhm.
think, yeah, and I think, kind of bringing it back around to thinking about community, I think that's where you really have to, the community is absolutely necessary, not only for the support, but also the accountability and following
Exactly.
through on things. You all
Mhm.
want to say more
Yeah.
about that? Yeah, just,
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about what you just said, Gordon. And I just have a quick question to ask before I go to that
mm-hmm,
point. But because you've been on this journey for a while, right?
mm-hmm,
How many
mm-hmm.
years now? How many years
No,
is it now?
gosh, I've been I've been in private practice since about 2006. So and then
Okay.
started the practice of therapy in 2016. So been
So
doing,
almost, so 10 years practice of therapy, almost,
mm-hmm,
almost, right? And almost 20
mm-hmm,
years of private practice. I have a question
right.
for you before I go to the community piece.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you had to realign
Ooh.
kind of what you're focusing on and what your priorities are in that
Oh,
20-year journey?
at least weekly. No, no, yeah. It's a constant process. I mean, and I think it's a myth for people to think that you're going to arrive at a
Yes.
kind of a finished thing. And so I think just being willing to flex and to move and to change. I
Mhm.
mean, I was with my podcast network. We're going to do a live session in a few weeks, and we're going to talk about how mental health has changed. I mean, the mental health,
Uh-huh.
wellness space and all of
Sure.
that, how much it has changed. And so we've had to adjust to that along the way. And particularly, as you all know, in a group practice, every time you bring on somebody new, there's some change that occurs that you have to adjust to. So, yeah. So
Yeah. So a
pretty
lot.
much weekly.
It's so
Well, and I
honest
just
and
want,
true, though.
yeah. Well, and I
Mhm,
wanted to ask that question because, you've actually been on this journey a lot longer than we have, right? And
mhm,
I know that even in the past, I guess it's been almost 6 years for me that I've been on this journey. There has been so many reiterations and different seasons and different times
mhm,
where I've had to adjust my expectation of what should be prioritized in that season.
mhm,
And to your question, what has helped me, and I know Steph, and I'm curious to know your response to this as well, is community has been the piece that I think to myself, if I had not gotten into some type of community early on, which I was like month 3 in my business where I was climbing the wall. Number 1, I didn't know
mhm,
tons. Okay. I just was like, I'm going to go hang a shingle and it's going to be fine. And then, nobody was calling. Okay. And
uh-huh,
I was the sole income provider with a child at home trying to figure this out. So I got to community out of desperation, like
mhm,
also out of loneliness because I had never worked
right,
by myself before. And by month 3, I love people and I love the people I serve, but like not having a community was really hard for me. And so
mhm,
what we found is that with all these emotions that you do have, whether it's I'm trying to figure this out and I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm overwhelmed by all the things I have to do, or, especially when you get to group practice ownership, like I'm worrying about my employees. They don't
mhm,
realize how much I'm
mhm,
probably going to bed at night worrying about them and making sure that this thing keeps going so that they can continue to do this great work. But what I found is that community really allowed me the space to not feel alone and to also be able to share, whether it be resources. Like that's why I love when I'm asking you this question,
mhm,
Gordon. I mean, there's a lot of things you've learned in 20 years that I probably still have not learned, right?
mhm,
And so if I'm in community with you, I sometimes can give Gordon a call and be like, listen, Gordon, this thing just happened.
mhm,
Help. And you
yeah,
have somebody you can call up who gets it. And,
mhm.
that's something that I think is really valuable, but that's at a very high level. How has community helped you
Oh,
throughout the
well, I
years?
mean, yeah, oh yeah, that's a good question. But I tell people all the time, every time I have taken part in either a retreat or a conference, or, I have a membership community as well. And I know you guys have been parts of different ones along the way, but every time I've taken part in that, I've experienced exponential growth of some sort or some form or fashion. And part of it is like you were saying, Christy, is just the fact that there are so many blind spots that we can get. And when you have these other people that are part of your community or part of your world, they can see things from an outside perspective that you're not able to see. And also too, just, you know, recognizing, like like you were saying, is that okay, there are other people who have been through same things. And so they've kind of navigated through all of that. And so they can kind of say, yeah, say, well, this is how I did it, or you definitely don't want to do this,
Uh-huh.
or
Mhm.
something along those lines.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think there's such normalization of not knowing everything when you're in a group because it can
Mm-hmm.
feel sometimes like you should know it all, or, you make a mistake and you feel like you should have known better. And that can just like put you under emotional rubble.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's no way to drive the business forward if that's just the constant weight that you're carrying. And so what I've always found from community is just that shared, oh my gosh, what do I do and how do I do it? Really just helps you keep expectations of yourself in line. But then also, I think it's great to celebrate wins and accomplishments, and especially because this work is so unique, especially the client part. And you can't go home and always share some of those things, or people don't always get it to the degree another therapist will. And so that's what I always think is so special too about being in a group with other group practice owners. It's therapists who are employing other therapists, also doing therapy, and that's a very unique interwoven jumble of relationships.
Right.
And so being in a community with people that you don't have to explain that jumble at all, they're just like,
Yeah.
real, recognize real, I see you,
Yeah.
has been just a way to really, like I said, kind of at the top, get joy out of this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Also unburden a lot of the pain.
Right. You mentioned wins, and I think a lot of times too, my experience has been that a lot of times you might have wins and not recognize it as a win.
Yes.
And so for having other people to point those out to you is just invaluable. I mean, it's just kind of like, and it's just like going, in many ways, it's just like going to therapy or being in therapy is, our job as therapists is to really kind of point out the things to people that they may not recognize in themselves. And so I
Yeah.
think,
Well, and
So
I think
true.
that's how community can really tie back in as we're making the loop of the 5 R's and the reflection piece. What I've found is community sometimes forces me to reflect, right? And I know me and Steph, we've talked about this a lot because Steph would be like, oh, she would be sharing something. And I'd be like, that's incredible, right? And, and, that we should celebrate that. But she might not see that as a huge success because she may be thinking about the next thing she wants to make happen. Right. And, we can just, I think, and vice versa. She's done the same for me to be like, wow, that's amazing. And I'm like, but is it though? We have a hard time giving ourselves credit for sometimes things that have happened along the journey. But having those people that can be like, no, I know where you started at, Gordon.
Yep.
You should really give yourself a pat on the back, right? Then
Right.
you feel seen, heard, you feel like you're valued in that space. And I think that we often, especially as therapists, provide that valued space to so many people in our work, right? We
Right.
sit across the couch or whatever it is that your setup is in your office, and we provide that space to feel seen and feel heard. And for some of our clients that we worked with, it can be years along the journey. And I think what makes that relationship very special is because we've seen people through their highs, their lows, their challenges, and we've seen the growth. And I think in community, you get almost the same gift in a lot of ways that you give to so many people because people can walk that journey with you and also hold that space for you. Maybe not in the same way that the therapeutic relationship holds that space, but just as valuable, I think, for people trying to do this business thing because business, it can be fun, but it is hard.
Yeah, it
And
is.
if it was easy, everybody would do it. Okay.
All right.
And that's the reality. And so having people to help you through that, ooh,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, game changer.
And
Yeah.
what word we haven't used when we've talked about community yet is the amount of times that being in community in this space, those people turn into friends, like best friends, So, and people
Absolutely.
talk
Yeah.
all the time about how adulthood friendship is difficult and finding new friends is hard. But I am amazed anytime I reflect how I can shake a tree and find 5 new friends in this space, right? You go to a conference and you meet somebody and you're like, where have you been my whole life?
You're
Or you
right.
show up in a mastermind group virtually, and then you guys do meet in person for the first time 2 years later, and you feel so close to them, you forgot you haven't even met them in person yet.
Right.
And that's
Right.
really special too, to not only have colleagues that feel so trustworthy and valuable to you, but then they actually expand to being friends in your personal life too. And we all know that the business ownership is so personal. So for those colleagues to turn friends is,
Yeah.
I think, almost a joy unlike many others.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. As you all know, our mutual friends, and we all, it's interesting how we kind of form little, this might not be the best word, but kind of little pods of
Uh-huh.
people in this
Yeah.
space. And
Yeah.
so I meet with Uriah and Whitney and Jessica every week, and they have become some of my closest, dearest friends.
Mhm.
To your point there, Steph. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so cool. We have a group that we were in, started back in 2021, that still meets every other week.
Hmm.
On Thursdays. I don't know why I decided to stay on Thursdays. Like, that's super
Hmm.
relevant.
Well, that's
But
that's where we
But
meet
that's
as
the rhythm
well.
piece.
So
That's that R, that rhythm. Okay.
right,
uh-huh.
right.
Uh-huh. And it's just
Yeah.
special because, sometimes people show up in there and they're just like, I think I'm not being completely sane in my decision making here because this is
Hmm.
going on in my life. Can you help me? Or, like Christy said, making people identify a win, because we're not always good at it. And when those people become your friend, life just becomes more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you two, we could spend all day, and hopefully we will be able to do that soon.
Yes.
I've got to be respectful of your time. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you, and also things that you've got coming up and going.
Yeah. Christy, you want to talk about your awesome R's download?
Well, we did say, we're going to talk about these R's, but you need some space for reflection to actually do this. And so, one of the things that we would encourage you, if you're like, yes, I need reflection, but I don't know where to start, you can go over to the practicecollab.com/hey dash friend. Gordon, okay,
Mhm. All
hey dash
right.
friend, and there's a 5 R's worksheet that you can just download for free. It can give you some prompts to engage in how to set up this a reflection process in your own life for your practice, or to do it in community. But I also let Steph kind of talk a little bit about some things, exciting things we have coming our way.
Yeah, we have a couple offerings because, the group practice owner space really is where our heart is, and doing what we can in our way to bolster those people, doing this work of leading therapists, being a therapist, all of that. So we do about once a year, sometimes twice a year, these working weekends, which are similar to how Christy and I
Mhm.
met, but getting together and brainstorming or working on the nuts and bolts and just having that space in a dedicated space with other people. And then we also have what we call a collaborship, which is kind of like a mastermind, but it's very work oriented,
Mhm.
so emotional processing, and let's give you the time and space to work on your own to-do list, because we all know that as the leader of an organization, it's very hard for your own to-do list to get any time and attention. So that's a virtual option that we have for people. And then we also have designed a conference summit that's not quite a conference summit.
Mhm.
And what we do there is have a speaker and then take an hour to work on what the speaker presented. And you get broken up into small groups so you can, going back to what we're talking about, implement, right? So that's a
Mhm.
huge part of moving your business forward, your dreams forward. And so that was a heavy lift for us last year. It was our first time doing
Mhm.
it, but we loved it, had so much fun.
Yeah.
And we're doing that again this year in St. Louis, September 17th through 19th, and have some fun topics. Our agenda is getting rounded out, and that's just a fun space too, because one of the things that people will see in our offerings is we constantly try to balance being in community, but the time and space for implementation. That's kind of where Christy and I have found our magic and our mojo.
Mhm.
So that's what we try to create for colleagues in this space.
Awesome. Awesome. And we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary so people can find this easily. So, well, Christy and Stephanie, I'm so glad we connected, and we'll see you all here soon, I hope.